Hey there everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be finishing up our 4-link setup on our project Stacked, and I was doing some thinking last night after finishing up the frame mounts and such, and I know I said I was going to shoot tubes through the frame here, but I started thinking and I realized I still have quite a bit of sheet left, 3/16, and I'm not really going to be doing a whole lot more of heavy fabrication using that size of metal. So I decided I'm just going to go ahead and make plate extensions to box in the frame all the way to our upper link mounts. And there's our paper template. I already got that wrapped up, and it fits on both sides perfectly. So I am still going to run some bars from here to the box plate just to add some strength to the cross section there, and I will also still run a tube from here to here because a lot of people have asked why I bent the bar like that. And the reason why was, it just made it super simple to make the mounting tabs and get all that squared away. So today we're going to plate the frame, make the tubes that are going to tie into it, and we'll finish up the frame mounts as well. And we'll also finish the upper mounts on the differential, and then we'll go ahead and get that axle tab straightened out, the 1/4 inch or less that it needs to move. So we got a pretty busy day, and also got to run some errands, do a little tuning on Squiata while I'm at it. So let's jump into it. All right, here's our two plate extensions, and we went ahead and beveled the edge that's going to butt up against the current plate. Next step is going to be to prep the edges of the frame and then add our little notches for the tube and get this thing tacked on. All right, here's first look at our test fit. It looks like we're going to have to clearance for the tube a little bit more, and we might have to knock down that corner a bit to get it to sit a little straighter, but overall I'm pretty happy with the way it's going. So let's get back to work. All right, we're all tacked up and everything is looking really good. Our joint is really nice, so it should fill in really good, and then we can get started on making the arms that are going to run from here to here. Well, I laid down the bead across the top and connecting it to the original plate, and I'm pretty happy with it. I did have a couple of spots where I got some porosity because I didn't wire wheel it good enough before starting to weld, so I will grind these areas down and redo them. I'm just gonna keep it 100 with you guys. I'm not a professional, so it is what it is. It's fixable, and it's not a big deal in my book, so let's get to it. So your first step in fixing porosity is going to be to grind the porosity completely out of your weld area, and then you're going to want to wire brush it really good to try and get all of the contaminants from the grinding wheel out of there, and then just try again, lay down another bead, see how it goes. And there we go. It's not the prettiest in the world, but there's no more porosity. It's solid, and it's gonna do the job for us. So let's get back to it. I just realized it appears as though I've ruined another lens on my GoPro. I had it sitting behind where I was grinding, and somehow or another the lens protector that I had on there fell off. So I apologize if there is a whole bunch of blurriness in this video, but I'll get a new lens on there ASAP. Both sides are officially plated, welded top and bottom. There's a couple spots on the bottom that are kind of ugly, I'm not gonna lie. I have a little trouble doing overhead welding on my back, especially with MIG. I find it's actually a little easier with TIG, but there's still a lot of grime and stuff down there as well that was fighting me. But there's no porosity, it's just a couple of blobby spots, that's all. Anyways, I gotta go run some errands, so we're gonna take a pause on this, and we'll get back on it a little later this afternoon. Here's a view of both sides real quick. Head out. It's coming together real good. Well, we're moving right along on these frame mounts. They're completely welded out, and we added the lateral support gusset right there. You can kind of see it, and they seem solid as a rock. I'm really happy with the way this came out, and we're gonna go ahead and move on to our tubes that connect off of the center point to the frame rails. And I'm still trying to decide if I want to run them to the frame rails or should I just run them straight to the transmission mount and connect them in right here, you know. What do you guys think? Let me know. Decided to go ahead and go to the trans mount. I think it'll tie in better, so that's what we're going with. And I got it all welded up, the first bar. Time to move on to the second, and then we'll be ready to start on the airbag mounts behind the axle. And we're all done with the bracing. I was going to shoot another across here. I might still weld in a piece of flat plate as a gusset, but I think this is going to be plenty strong. And I actually really like the way it came out. So we're ready to jump onto the bag mounts now. All right, we're back at it on the COE project this morning. And first step we're gonna take today is getting the sway bar bolted back up onto the axle and figuring out what we can do for the axle mount for the airbags. We really don't have a lot of room to work with back here, so it's going to be a challenge, but I'm confident we'll figure something out. So let's get this sway bar bolted up. Well, I've just been mocking up a few different ideas I had, and I think I've come up with a game plan. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an X brace. I'm going to bend another piece of tube like this. It's going to come from this direction, and they'll connect at the point with plates to mount the upper bags to. And I'll mount these X brace the same way I did up there by shooting a tube through the frame at all 4 connecting points. And for the lower bag mount, it looks like we're gonna have enough room that we'll be able to shoot a tube off of here and just come out, do a 90, wrap around to the other side and reattach in. And I don't think we'll be able to pull the center section out of the differential anymore once we do that. Well, maybe, depending on how far out we push the tube, and that kind of sucks, but with this narrowed axle we don't have a whole lot of options. So that's the game plan so far, and I'm gonna get started firstly by making the upper cross brace, the X bar. Well, it turns out we're gonna have to hold off on that because I don't have any Sharpies left. Never buy your Sharpies off of Amazon because the entire box fails after using each marker like 1 time. I gotta go to Target. Okay, so here's what we're working with so far. I've done another cross brace, and I'm gonna do a second one actually that comes from the back area here and goes like that, and then we'll just plate in these side areas where the bags are gonna sit. And right now I'm just getting ready to tack weld everything in place on this guy, and that way we can move on to the next. We're moving right along on the rear bag mounts. This is what we're working with so far, and I just finished cutting out a template for the actual bag purchase, and it fits both sides. It's gonna weld into the tube work just like that, and we'll decide where exactly we want the mounting point to penetrate through this once we get these pieces tack welded in. So first step is to trace it onto the steel plate and get the plasma cutter. We're moving right along, paper to steel. Both sides are done, upper bag mounts pretty much complete. So all we got left to do is run a tube from here over to here, and then add some plating to support the lower bag, and I think that will be a wrap for the frame. So we're gonna definitely knock that out today.
So the basic game plan here for the axle bag mount is to take this tube and bend it into U-shape just like I did, and we'll add plates for the bottom of the bag here and here. And you know, I'm not 100% sure that yeah, it should be good. Well, after getting that lower bag support welded on the axle, I had a lot of concerns about leverage from the bags being able to break that hoop right off. So what I went ahead and did was I added a plate to connect the upper link bars, and I added a tube that connects down to the center of the bag mount hoop. So that should add a substantial amount of strength, and it should also ease us of any worrying that the hoop will break off. So we're getting real close to being done. All we really need now is the plates for the lower bag. And yeah, I think we'll be ready to take everything apart and start painting. Good afternoon. I'm getting a little bit of a late start today, working on the truck. But what we're getting into is finalizing the rear bag mounts. And what I mean is I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do back here, because the whole everything that I've come up with so far was just a skeleton, I guess you could say. I had fully intended to add a lot more supporting tubes and braces, and one of the braces that I'm going to add is going to come from the lower portion of that tube and tie in up here on both sides, and that'll add a little bit strength to it vertically. And then for the top here, I ended up not really liking the way that I flared these edges out, so I'm gonna just run an extra tube from each side just like that. And I'm still coming up with ideas as I go, so yeah, just basically winging it. Since I'm adding these bars in as an afterthought, I'm going to be modifying the plate a little bit below, and I basically just traced out where the tube is going to land, and I'm going to cut on this side of the line because I can always grind it down more, but if I cut off too much, I'll basically be screwed. So I'm going to trim these pieces off and start fitting this guy up. I haven't been asked this yet, but in case anybody was wondering, how do I know whether or not my welds are good? I've been doing this long enough that I've had to remove a lot of pieces that I've welded on, and this case is no different in this area here. If the weld area was weak and I cut it as I did all the way to the joint, and I'm taking these pliers and bending it up and down, the weld would either snap off or it would break in the heat affected zone. But it's just on there really good, so that's how I know that my welds are good. So I got the driver's side done, and I had to notch this guy, I would say at least 6 times, just taking incremental pieces out to get that perfect fit, and it came out really nice. So I'm gonna jump over to the other side now and get started on it. I almost ran into an issue with trimming a little bit too much off of the plate, so I'm going to make sure that I leave a little bit extra, even more on this side, because it just makes it easier to weld out. Well, I'm super unhappy to report that while I was doing a little grinding, I lost track of where the camera was at, and as you can probably tell, destroyed the lens again. So I do have one on order. It should be here sometime next week, and I'll just try and keep the updates to a minimum until that time, unless the lens isn't as bad as it looks, but I have a feeling it's pretty trashed. Anyways, I got the other side done here, and we're about ready to move on to making the vertical support braces. So that's what we're gonna do. Quick shot of the fitment on some of these tubes I'm throwing in here. I try to get them all as good as possible, even though I'm only using MIG. It just makes it easier. All right, we're inching closer and closer. I think I'm pretty much done with the upper bag mounts. I've got a lot of support in there now, and I like the way it looks, so I'm happy with that. The lower bag mounts, we really just have to cut out the round plates for the bags, and I'm also gonna... Today I'm working on finishing the lower bag mounts, and my basic plan for that is to just run a tube from here to here on each side, and then put some plate over it, of course, for the bag to bolt to. And I think that will pretty much wrap up the lower bag mount as well. I am actually still bouncing around a couple of ideas for the upper mount. Maybe a couple of straight bars where I can fit them just to add strength, you know. I don't think you can have enough tubes. Maybe I could even run one back here. So we'll get started on that. Tube notching is a process. I hit it pretty close, maybe 1 out of 10 times, but all the other times I probably have each tube in here at least 3 times to get it exactly how I want it, which is just to make it fit. Check it out. I didn't put enough into it this time, so we'll have to go back and take another bite out of it. But you can see it just needs to move in more. And I do use like an angle finder to try and get an idea, but sometimes it's just not perfect, you know. Not too bad for our first notch. I think we're pretty spot on. It was about 45 degrees that I measured with my trusty little angle finder there. And now we'll just check what we get on this side, and it should slide over into place perfectly. Well, after checking the angle finder and looking at it, it really only makes sense that it would be the same angle, since I think that's called a right triangle. I don't know. I didn't pay a lot of attention in math class, or any class for that matter. So this is a little tip that well, I don't know if it's a good tip or not, but this is what I do when I'm trying to make a notch land on the same plane, or even the opposite plane. I'll take my little digital level here, and I'll check the level of the notcher itself. It's usually almost always 87.3. That's a combination of, because of the stand, I don't have like a set bolt on this guy, so it actually wobbles in there, and also maybe could be the floor a little bit, but anyways, so yeah, 87.2. so that means we need a measurement off of the face of our notch to be let's see, I believe it's 2.7. I think that's what I shoot for every time. And we'll just take the level again and set it right there. Oh, I'm sorry, it should be exactly the same measurement as the back of the notcher. So we're looking for 87.2. And if you were looking to do a notch at a 90-degree angle, that's when you would want it to be at like 2.7, like I was saying earlier. So I've got 87.3, and always check that guy as well. It always has to match, because there are two 87.3s, as I have found out. So we're right there. And we'll make this notch, and it should fit perfectly. All right, moment of truth. Is it a right angle? Yes, look at that. Very nice. So we'll get this cleaned up on the belt sander and clean up this tube a little bit, get it welded in, make a paper template for the triangle here. Luckily, I believe the center of the bag is going to sit just inside this area. So we got them partially welded in, and I think we're almost ready to roll the axle back out and finish welding like the axle tabs on and stuff. And we still have to address the driver's side axle tab being slightly off on its orientation. I would like to do that with the axle still on the truck, just because it'll have to be back on the truck for mock-up purposes. So let's check it out and see if we can't cut those tack welds off and break those axle tabs loose. It looks like we might be in luck. I remember when I did this, I was actually using my head, and I just did 3 tack welds on this one, and just cut them and knock this off, and then cut these 3 and knock it off, and we'll be ready to relocate them. So let's get into that. Gotta love having to remove parts, but unfortunately that's just a part of the deal when you're cramming way more crap on a car than was. It's the strangest thing, the problem's not there anymore. When I pop out the link, whoops, it goes right back in just the way it's supposed to, and the bolt holes line up. So I guess I didn't have to cut any of that stuff off, so we'll just go ahead and take the axle off now and weld it up. I'm welding up all the miscellaneous odds and ends, and I did pretty nice on this side, but I ran into some trouble over here and started getting some pores, so I stopped. I'm gonna grind it out and try again. A lot of times after grinding it out, and you think you'll wire brush it good enough, but the abrasive material gets embedded in the metal pretty good when you're grinding it, so you really have to wire brush it like way more than you ever would expect to, and even then you're still, you know, there's a possibility that you will get porous again. I've had it happen a lot, so just be ready for it. Got it all cleaned up, and we're about to try again. All right, we managed to avoid getting porosity this time. I did undercut it a teeny bit in the middle there. I will just add a little bit more weld over the top of that to even it out. There's nothing wrong with that besides for the fact it won't look as pretty. But finally got everything welded up on the axle and put back together. I probably should have painted it before I did that, because now I'm gonna have to take it apart again. But last thing to do is make the plates for these areas here, and I've already drawn them out, so we're just gonna cut them out, test fit them, and then make them out of metal. Our templates are slightly undersized due to the way we traced, so what we're gonna do is just oversize them a bit on the metal so that they'll sit flat on the top of this instead of slightly countersunk, because we don't want the bags to sit on an uneven surface. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but you know, we might as well try to make it flat as possible. All right, I got both of the plates in there and fully welded. All that's left to do is reinstall the bags, figure out where the mounting hole goes through those plates, drill it, and bolt them up, and I think that's a wrap for the axle as well. Hey everyone. So I know yesterday I ended the day by saying that the axle bag mounts was done, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I just want to add more support. So the game plan is I'm going to plate this area right here, and I'm going to run a tube off of it that attaches from the underside on the bag mounts on both sides, and I think then I'll finally be happy. But first thing we gotta do is make those plates, so let's grab a piece of paper and make a template. Here's our template. I left the entire edge wide open, and when I cut this out a 1/4 inch plate, that's gonna give me
such a perfect joint to fill. So
we got our surfaces prepped and our pieces cut out. Pretty nice fit, and we got real good gaps, so should weld real nice. I am looking for my wire brush. If you've seen it, there's a reward. Got our pieces tacked in, so we'll go ahead and get it fully welded, and hopefully we don't get any porosity. I'm working on making the support braces now. I've got my piece of tube here. I already coped the side that's going to wrap around the axle and mount on our little plates there, kind of like that. And I made my first notch, and unfortunately it's not quite enough, so we gotta go throw it back in and take a little bit more out, maybe a lot a bit more. I don't even know if my notcher will be able to take that big of a bite, but we'll try. All right, a second notch. We still could go further if we have to, but I'm about to test fit this guy up and see what we're looking like. And it looks like we're actually in pretty good shape. So the only problem we have now is we're interfering with the weld from this guy, so we'll have to take a little notch out of this piece where it intersects. We're looking real good, so I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this part for the other side, and then we'll get them welded. All right, I think I'm finally happy with the amount of support these bag mounts have. I've got both pieces welded on. Everything went pretty smooth, so the next step really with this whole thing is to paint all of it, and I have to take it apart to do that. So I think I'm gonna find something else to fabricate. All right, we're finally ready to air the rear end up for the first time on the semi airbags that we installed. So let's pump some air into these things and see what happens. Well, it looks pretty good, and it airs up pretty fast too, so looks like we're ready to paint this stuff.